Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I'd been working at the pet supply store for almost 2 years, long shifts for barely enough to scrape by. It wasn't much, but it was something. Every day felt the same. The dull hum of the fluorescent lights, the smell of dog food and hamster bedding mixing in the air, the shrill beep of the register whenever a customer checked out. I'd get home late, tired, and with barely enough energy to eat before collapsing in bed. But today, as I slid into my old car and pulled away from the store, I felt something different. A strange, almost giddy relief trickled through me. I'd put in my 2 weeks' notice, and in a couple of days, I'd be starting my new job as a veterinary technician. No more minimum wage, no more struggling to make ends meet. For once, I could see a path ahead, steady and secure. I'd be able to pay off the small loan I owed my sister, maybe even chip away at the other debts that had been hanging over me like a storm cloud. I smiled a little at the thought, gripping the wheel tighter. It was a small thing, paying off that loan, but it would feel good. My hands on the wheel, my foot on the pedal, it felt like freedom, even if it was just the beginning. As I pulled into the familiar neighborhood, my smile faltered. The houses I'd driven by every day, the same cracked sidewalks and old oak trees, suddenly felt different. Not in a good way. It was like the air had shifted, even though I couldn't put my finger on why. I had the faintest sense that something was off, but I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just the anticipation of what was to come, the future, finally looking bright. But the pit in my stomach didn't go away as I turned the corner toward my house. Something felt wrong. Something was waiting for me. I pulled into the driveway and slowed the car to a stop, my hands still gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from floating away. At first, I thought it was a block party or something. People gathered in groups, murmuring to each other, their phones held high in the air, recording. Some of them looked at me as I parked, but their faces weren't friendly. They weren't smiling. I blinked, confused, and then I saw them. My family. My mother was standing in the middle of the crowd, talking to one of the neighbors. Her phone was in her hand, pointed at something on the ground. My older brother, Steve, was kicking a black trash bag, sending it tumbling across the yard. And my sister, Amanda, was laughing. I couldn't tell if she was laughing at something or if she was just laughing to hear herself. But what stopped me cold, made the blood drain from my face, were the bags. The black trash bags scattered all over the lawn. My stuff, thrown out for everyone to see. My stomach dropped, the kind of drop you feel when you're falling but haven't hit the ground yet. I sat there frozen, my car idling in the driveway, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. It wasn't a party. It wasn't a neighborhood event. This was a spectacle. And I was the punchline. I stared at the mess, the piles of my belongings, clothes, shoes, some old books I never bothered to unpack, and I felt my heart tighten. They were throwing it all out, right there, in front of everyone. I could hear my mom talking, her voice carrying over to me, even though I wasn't close. "She'll never learn, will she?" I couldn't hear the neighbor's reply, but the tone was clear enough. A part of me wanted to scream, to get out of the car and ask what the hell was going on. But I was frozen. I couldn't move. And then I saw my mom. She wasn't just watching. She was taking pictures of me, of my things, lying in the grass like garbage. My eyes stung, but I didn't let the tears come. Not yet. I glanced over at the neighbors, who were still standing around, murmuring, watching it all go down. Some of them smiled like it was a joke. Some of them were whispering behind their hands, maybe to protect themselves from being caught staring too long. But they were all there, watching. My sister Amanda caught sight of me then, and her face split into a cruel grin. She raised her phone, pointing it directly at me. "Look who's home," she said, her voice too loud, too sharp. "You finally show up to see what's left of your life?" I wanted to tell her to shut up, to tell her to stop, but the words caught in my throat. I glanced at my mom again. She was still talking to the neighbors, oblivious to everything else. Maybe she was proud of herself. Maybe this was all some twisted message to show me how much I had screwed up. I didn't know what hurt more, the humiliation or the fact that she didn't care enough to explain, to give me a chance. She was too busy painting me as the failure, like I was the one who had done this to myself. This, whatever this was, wasn't just about a late rent payment. It wasn't about anything I had done. This was about her making sure everyone knew it, and she wasn't going to let me forget. My legs were shaking as I stepped out of the car. My breath was shallow, like I couldn't quite catch it, like my lungs didn't know how to handle what was happening. Every step toward the mess on the lawn felt like wading through thick mud. I could feel my pulse in my throat, beating so loud I thought the neighbors might hear it too. Amanda's voice sliced through the air like a knife. "Look at her," she said, her phone aimed right at me. "God, how embarrassing. You're really gonna let her do this to you, huh? You're really just gonna let her live in your house forever?" She laughed. It was cruel, like a game, like watching someone fail and making sure the world knew it. I tried not to let it show. I kept my head down, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I couldn't believe this was happening. Couldn't believe it was my family doing this to me. Steve kicked one of the black bags, the toe of his sneaker catching a pile of clothes and sending them flying across the yard like they were nothing. It felt like he was kicking me, like every part of me was being thrown in the dirt, stepped on, ruined. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the lump in my throat from choking me. Then I heard her voice. My mother. "You're still living with me, barely helping out. It's time to grow up," she yelled, her words sharp and cold. I winced at the sound of them. My heart twisted in my chest like she had just stuck a knife in it and turned. She didn't even care who heard her. She wasn't even trying to keep it quiet. She was proud of this, proud of the public humiliation she was putting me through. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. Her words had cut deeper than I thought anything could. I wasn't a failure to anyone but her. She had always held that over me, always made me feel like I was never doing enough. But I wasn't going to cry. Not here, not now. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I kept my eyes focused on the bags on the lawn, trying to ignore the way my hands were shaking. I picked up a few shirts, folded them quickly. The fabric felt thin and fragile between my fingers, like I might crush it if I wasn't careful. I didn't look at my mom, didn't look at Steve, didn't look at Amanda. I couldn't. It hurt too much. But I couldn't just leave my stuff there. I couldn't let them win. "Don't just stand there, pick up your crap," Steve called out, his voice mocking. He kicked another bag, and I watched as my boots sank into the grass, each step heavier than the last. I was so close to losing it, so close to breaking down and screaming, but I couldn't let that happen. Not with them all watching. Not when I had to keep it together. My mother was still talking, still shouting. I heard her say something about how I never respected her, how I couldn't even manage to get a job I could keep, how I was nothing but dead weight in her house. Every word stung. It stung like nothing else ever had. But I kept my mouth shut, because what could I say? What could I say when she didn't even look at me? When she only saw me as someone who had failed her, over and over again? I wasn't going to give her any more power over me. Not today, not ever again. Instead, I grabbed a bag off the lawn, my hands still shaking, and tossed it in the trunk of my car. The neighbors were watching. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, whispering behind their hands. But the worst part? The worst part was the way I couldn't stop hearing my mother's voice in my head, telling me I wasn't good enough. I was still trying to move quickly, still trying to pack up the few things that mattered to me. A jacket, a pair of shoes, a box of old photos I didn't even care to look at right now. I shoved them into the trunk of the car, the sound of fabric scraping against the metal, the weight of it all sinking in. I couldn't get my hands to stop shaking. It felt like everyone was watching, like I was part of some twisted performance for the neighborhood to enjoy. I wasn't fast enough. My eyes darted to the porch, and that's when I saw him. My father stood there, silent, leaning against the door frame with his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't move, didn't say a word. His face was unreadable, but I knew him too well. That stillness was worse than anything he could have shouted. I kept grabbing bags, trying to pretend he wasn't there, trying to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. The longer he stood there, the more I felt my insides twist tighter, like a rope that was being pulled, slowly, until I was sure it would snap. Then, without warning, he took a step forward. I froze. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the house keys, my keys, and tossed them onto the lawn. They landed with a soft clink that felt like thunder in the silence. "You're not my daughter anymore," he said, his voice flat, like he was reading a script. "Get out. 30 minutes, or I'll call the cops." My heart stopped. My entire body froze. I couldn't breathe. The finality of it hit me like a punch in the gut. 30 minutes. 30 minutes to leave the house I grew up in. 30 minutes before my father, the man who had been in my life since the beginning, would turn me into a stranger. I stood there for a moment, the weight of his words pressing down on me, suffocating me. My sister was still filming. She had zoomed in on the keys on the ground, her smirk playing at the corners of her mouth as she caught the moment on her phone. The lens felt like a spotlight. I could feel her eyes on me, could almost hear her laughing in my head. She didn't have to say anything. Her camera was saying everything she wanted. My mother didn't move either. She was standing on the other side of the lawn, a small, satisfied smile on her face, like she had orchestrated this whole thing. Her eyes met mine briefly, and I saw that same look I'd seen in her before. Disappointment. She wasn't angry, wasn't sad. She was just done. I was done in her eyes. I didn't react. I couldn't. But my hands betrayed me. They shook violently as I bent down to pick up the keys. I almost dropped them twice, the metal cold against my fingers. I kept my head down, my face a mask, but inside I was screaming. Inside I was breaking. The neighbors were still watching, some of them whispering to each other, others with their phones out, recording it all like it was some kind of show. I could hear snippets of their conversation, their whispers slicing through the air, and the sound made me sick. I got the keys into my palm, clutching them so hard my knuckles went white. My stomach twisted, and the tears I'd been holding back for what felt like years finally welled up, but I refused to let them fall. I didn't know where to go, but I couldn't stay here, not like this. I looked at my father one last time. He was still standing there, still silent, like he'd never even known me. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I stood up, the keys still gripped tightly in my hand, and turned toward the car. I didn't look back, didn't dare to. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. But as I got in the car and started the engine, I felt their eyes on me, burning into my back. I felt their laughter in my bones, echoing in the empty space between me and the house I had just left behind. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd break. If I looked back, I'd collapse in front of them, and that was the last thing I was going to do. Not today. I focused on the car, on the bags in the trunk, on just getting my stuff out of there, one bag at a time, slowly, carefully. The sound of my boots against the gravel felt like it echoed for miles. Every movement felt deliberate, controlled, like if I made it through this without losing it, I might still have a shred of dignity left. I grabbed another bag, shoving it into the trunk as efficiently as I could. There was no hurry, no rush to make this go faster. I had 30 minutes. The neighbors were still there, still watching. Some of them looked uncomfortable, some just stared with that look of quiet pity. They probably thought I was pathetic, a loser who couldn't even get her life together enough to live on her own. Others, like the couple on the corner, looked entertained, amused even, probably waiting for something more dramatic. Maybe they thought I'd snap or yell or beg. I wasn't going to give them that. I just kept loading the car. Amanda's voice rang out again, sharp and biting. "What a failure," she called from the lawn, her voice carrying. "No wonder she's getting thrown out." I didn't look at her, didn't even spare a glance. She was still recording, of course, still filming every second of this disaster like it was some kind of sport. My hands were shaking, but I refused to let them see it. I wouldn't let them know how badly they were getting to me. Instead, I bent down, grabbed another bag, and shoved it into the trunk. I didn't care if the neighbors saw, if they judged. They weren't the ones who had to live through this. They weren't the ones who had to pick up the pieces of a life that was being thrown away for everyone to gawk at. My mother's laughter cut through the air, a soft chuckle that seemed to hum behind her words. She wasn't just enjoying this moment. She was savoring it. I could hear her talking to one of the neighbors, probably giving them the details on how I was a disappointment, how I'd never been able to get my act together. But I wasn't going to listen to her anymore. I couldn't. I slammed the trunk closed, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me like a thick fog. I was done. No more explaining, no more apologies. This was my life now. I wasn't going to beg anyone to let me stay. I looked over at my father's porch one last time. He was still standing there, arms crossed, watching me like he was waiting for me to screw up one more time. I didn't give him the satisfaction of looking at him for too long. I turned away and got into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life under my hands. The car idled for a moment, and I could feel their eyes on me, watching every second, waiting to see how I would leave, how I would react. I could hear the laughter now, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't just my mom or Amanda, it was everyone. The neighbors, the people who had witnessed the mess they had made of my life. Their whispers followed me, echoing in the back of my mind. "You're nothing. You'll never make it." I wasn't going to let it break me. Not now. Not after everything I'd been through. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. I shifted into drive and slowly pulled out of the driveway. The street felt like it stretched on forever, like I was being dragged through the weight of all their judgment, all their opinions. The sound of my family's laughter echoed in my ears, bouncing around in the empty space inside the car. It was almost like it was chasing me, but I wasn't going to turn back. I couldn't. The road in front of me felt wide, open, full of possibilities. For the first time in a long time, I was free. I drove for what felt like hours, the hum of the engine the only thing keeping me grounded. The streets blurred past, each mile a little more distance between me and everything I just left behind. The laughter still rang in my ears, but the farther I got from that street, the quieter it became, like it was being swallowed by the road itself. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back. I pulled into Jess's apartment complex just as the sun dipped low, casting the parking lot in a tired orange light. Her building was nothing fancy, just a small, old brick complex, but it felt like a safe place, a place I could breathe. I grabbed a few bags out of the trunk, the weight of them pulling at my shoulders. It felt like the weight of everything I'd just lost, my family, my home, my dignity. I barely made it to her door before Jess opened it, her eyes widening at the sight of me standing there, clutching my life in a couple of bags. "Hey," she said, stepping aside. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. I just pushed past her and into the apartment. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to explain. Jess didn't ask. She didn't need to. She just closed the door behind me and grabbed the bags from my hands without a word. "Let's get you settled," she said quietly, leading me to the couch. "You can crash here tonight. No questions." I sat down, exhausted. Physically, emotionally, every part of me felt like it had been dragged through the dirt. The couch was old and worn, but it felt like the most comfortable thing in the world at that moment. I sank into it, my shoulders dropping as if I could finally let go of some of the tension that had been building for years. Jess sat across from me on the coffee table, her eyes kind, but there was something in them. Maybe concern, maybe confusion, but she didn't ask. She just looked at me for a long moment, then started talking about her new job at the clinic. She was a vet tech now, working with animals, something she'd always dreamed of doing. I could see the excitement in her face, her voice light, as she went on about the cases she'd worked on, the new animals they were helping. "And the people are amazing," she said, her eyes sparkling. "They actually care about what we're doing. It's so different from anything I've ever done. I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." I listened, nodding when I needed to, letting the words wash over me. It was hard not to feel a small flicker of hope, a tiny spark lighting up in my chest. She was moving forward. Jess was living her dream, and here I was, sitting on her couch with a trunk full of nothing but my own failures. But the more she talked, the more I felt it, that small, almost invisible sense of possibility. She was doing it, she was making it, and maybe, just maybe, I could too. The thought of starting over, of moving forward, felt less impossible in this moment. The weight of everything I had just walked away from was still there, pressing against my chest. But Jess's words, her excitement, her optimism, started to cut through. Maybe this job, this new life, was what I needed. Maybe it could pull me out of the mess I'd just walked out of. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the last of the tension. "That sounds amazing, Jess," I finally said, my voice a little rough, but there was a small smile tugging at my lips. "I'll get there. I just need time." She nodded, her expression soft. "You will. You're already starting, right? That's what matters." It was a small thing, but it meant everything. For the first time today, I didn't feel like I was completely drowning. Maybe I wasn't just a failure. Maybe I was just in the middle of it all, figuring things out. As Jess kept talking about her job, I let myself drift, letting the exhaustion settle in my bones. There was still a long road ahead, but right now, in this moment, I felt like I was finally getting the chance to breathe. The next morning, Jess was already up when I woke, sitting on the couch with her phone in hand, scrolling through something. The low hum of the TV was the only sound in the apartment, the light from the window casting a soft glow across the room. I sat up slowly, my body still sore from the emotional weight of the day before, but it felt good to be somewhere quiet, somewhere away from the noise of my family. Jess glanced at me, her face tight, like she wasn't sure how to bring something up. "Hey," she started, her voice hesitant. "I hate to show you this, but you need to see it." Before I could ask what she meant, she handed me her phone. I took it from her, not sure what to expect. I almost didn't want to know. When I saw what was on the screen, my heart dropped into my stomach. It was a video, a clip from Amanda's social media feed. I could tell it was edited, pieced together like some kind of sick montage. It started with a shot of the trash bags on the lawn. The ones I'd watched get tossed out like my entire life didn't matter. Then there was a slow zoom in on me, struggling to gather my things, the camera zooming in on my face, the bags in my arms. My sister's voice was in the background, making her usual snide comments about how I was a burden, how I'd never make anything of myself. The whole thing was set to some dramatic music, like it was a reality TV show, like I was the villain. I felt a sharp heat rise in my chest, anger boiling up from somewhere deep inside. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite name. I should have felt devastated, humiliated all over again, but I felt detached, like it wasn't even happening to me, like it was just some sick spectacle playing out on a screen. That's disgusting, I said, my voice shaking slightly as I handed the phone back to Jess. She nodded, her eyes soft with sympathy. Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I stared at the floor for a moment, trying to process it, trying to understand what was happening. It wasn't just a bad moment caught on camera, it was a deliberate attempt to make me the joke, to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. And then I remembered what Jess had said about my mother. Has she? Has she been telling people about me? I asked, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. Jess hesitated before answering, her voice careful. Yeah, she's been telling everyone how lazy and ungrateful you are, how you can't get your life together, how you can't even pay rent or help around the house, that kind of thing. But, I mean, you've had a job lined up for a while, right? I nodded, a knot tightening in my stomach. I didn't even know where to begin. My mother, my own mother, had been telling people that I was the problem, that I was the one who couldn't figure it out. She had twisted the story, made me the villain in my own life, and I couldn't figure out why. But then it hit me. This wasn't just about a late rent payment. This wasn't a one-time outburst from a mother who was frustrated. This was calculated. This was about control. She had set me up to fail in front of everyone we knew. She had done this on purpose, to publicly shame me, to strip me of any dignity I had left, to make sure I never thought I could stand on my own. I could feel the anger creeping in again, a cold rage that started in the pit of my stomach and spread outward. But it wasn't just anger. It was a deep, gnawing sadness, too, the kind that made you realize how far you'd fallen from the person you thought you knew. You have to be kidding me, I muttered under my breath, staring down at my hands. She's been telling people that? That I'm lazy? I have a job lined up for next week. She knows that. She knows how hard I've been trying. Jess didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She knew how much this hurt. She didn't have to say that my family's lies were poison, that they were trying to keep me small so they could feel big. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. I can't control what they say, I said, more to myself than to Jess, but I'm done. I'm not letting them keep dragging me down. I'm done with them. Jess gave me a small, encouraging smile, her eyes full of understanding. You're better off, you know? I didn't know if I believed her yet, but I had to. I had no other choice. I couldn't keep fighting with them, couldn't keep letting them manipulate me into thinking I was nothing. I looked down at my phone for a second, and the thought flickered in my mind. Should I respond to Amanda? Should I confront my mom? But then I thought about how much energy that would take, how much more I'd be feeding into their game. And I realized something. No matter what they said, no matter how many lies they spread, it wouldn't change who I was. They didn't get to decide that anymore. I'm cutting ties, I said, more firmly this time, like I meant it. I'm not looking back, not this time. Jess nodded, her smile widening. Good. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally moving in the right direction. Even if it was just one step, one decision at a time, I was moving forward. Weeks had passed since I left everything behind, and slowly, I was starting to settle into my new life. The job at the clinic was tough, physically demanding in ways I hadn't expected, but it felt real. The smell of antiseptic and animal fur, the sound of the constant hum of the fluorescent lights, and the bustle of the staff moving in and out. I wasn't just handing out pet food anymore. I was helping animals, assisting the vets, doing something that mattered. The hours were long, and my feet ached by the end of the day, but every muscle soreness reminded me that I was moving, that I was doing something. And there was pride in that. The first time I had to hold a dog still for a shot, its wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine. I thought I might lose my nerve. But then I remembered why I was there. It wasn't about me, it was about the animals. I steadied my hands, calmed the dog, and did my job. And when it was done, the sense of accomplishment, of knowing I had done something right, stayed with me. I carried that feeling with me every day. But as hard as the work was, the nights were harder. Alone in Jess's apartment, I had time to think, to let my mind drift back to the family I'd walked away from. I couldn't help but think about them sometimes, even though I tried not to. I thought about my mom, about the way she'd torn me apart with her words, about how she made everything feel like my fault. I thought about the lies she'd told people, the shame she'd heaped on me for all the wrong reasons. One night, after another exhausting day at the clinic, I sat on the couch with my phone in hand, scrolling through messages I had ignored for weeks. As much as I hated to admit it, I was still connected to them in some way, even if I didn't want to be. My finger hovered over the screen, moving mindlessly until I saw it. A message from my mother. It was short, but the words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Come back home. We need to talk. We can patch things up. I stared at the message, my heart racing. For a moment, I thought I might respond. Maybe I'd tell her how wrong she was, how hurt I had been. Maybe I'd tell her everything I felt, all the years of being made to feel like nothing. Maybe I'd finally scream it all out. But then something stopped me. I realized that I didn't need to respond. I didn't owe her anything. She had already shown me who she was, what she was willing to do to keep control, to manipulate me into staying small, into staying in her shadow. Her need for validation, for me to beg for her approval, had nothing to do with me anymore. I didn't need her to tell me I was good enough. I had already figured out I was more than good enough on my own, so I didn't respond. Instead, I swiped the message away and deleted it without a second thought. It felt freeing. For the first time since all of this started, I felt like I was truly in control of my life. My mother's need to tear me down, to keep me tethered to her world of lies and manipulation, was no longer my burden. It wasn't mine to carry. I sat back against the couch, my fingers still gripping the phone, but the weight of it felt different, lighter. I didn't need to engage with her anymore. I didn't need her to fix things for me. I was fixing things for myself. I smiled a little to myself, feeling a flicker of pride, of relief that I was finally doing this on my own, finally not letting her pull me back into the same toxic mess. It wasn't easy. Leaving her behind was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I was doing it. And each day I was proving to myself that I didn't need her approval or anyone else's. I had my own life now. And for the first time, that felt like enough. It was my birthday. I'd almost forgotten, but when I looked at the calendar, it hit me all at once. The first birthday I was spending away from my family. No chaos, no guilt trips, no pretending everything was fine. Instead, I made it a point to do things differently. I didn't need a big celebration, didn't need any of them to tell me how sorry they were. I just needed peace. I decided to make a simple dinner, nothing fancy. I'd picked up a few things from the store earlier, some pasta and a bottle of cheap wine. I wasn't a cook, but it didn't matter. It was mine, and I was doing this for myself. I chopped the vegetables clumsily, the knife slipping a few times. But I didn't care. It was about being present, about doing something that felt right. After dinner, I went to the bakery down the street. The place smelled like sugar and butter, the air thick with the scent of freshly baked goods. I picked out the smallest cake, chocolate with a little note written in frosting. Happy birthday, in cursive letters. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt like a gift I could give myself. That evening, Jess and a couple of friends from the clinic came over. We sat around, laughing, sharing stories from work. It wasn't anything special, just a quiet, relaxed night. But for the first time in a long time, it felt right. I didn't feel out of place. I wasn't holding my breath, waiting for some family member to call and ruin the moment. We ate cake, and the conversation flowed easily. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I didn't have to prove anything. I was exactly where I needed to be. As the night wore on, I retreated to the couch to relax, scrolling through my phone. That's when I saw it, a text from my mother. Are you coming home for your birthday celebration? We need to talk. I could feel the old emotions stir for a second, anger, sadness, frustration, but then I took a breath. It was just a text. I didn't need to respond. I didn't want to. Without hesitation, I blocked the number. No more being pulled back into that world, no more trying to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. I put my phone down, and for the first time, it felt like silence wasn't deafening. It was peaceful. The rest of the evening passed without another thought to her. I sat there with my friends, my laughter genuine and easy. I wasn't carrying any extra weight, no guilt, no expectations. Just the comfort of knowing I'd built this new life, one that wasn't controlled by anyone else. And as I looked around at the people who actually cared about me, I knew I'd made the right choice. For the first time in a long time, I felt content.